in our third lecture, we are going to understand the traditional root of these practices. As we said that we cannot cover the entire country because there are too many in number, and that may divert us from our basic focus, which is to understand the variety and the stylistic quality of it, and that should basically follow a path where we critically look at them, assess them, and then appreciate them with proper methodology. So in a way, when we looked at Madhubani painting in the previous slide, we have seen that there's a traditional root that is connected to it, and that was rigidly caste based, and whether it's for good or not, but that gave birth to many different visual styles that also provided to the modern painters to be more confident and use variety of styles there. And right now, when the caste based restrictions are more or less removed from the custom, from the practice, where nobody is actually bothered because it's getting through a very different social and economic condition in today's time. As like if we go back and just get into the basic thematic aspect, and we get back to the story of it, we get to see that it's something that a particular zone where the male members of a family were engaged in the agrarian practices, where the women, they painted things on the walls, floors, and also on many different places which is connected to their ceremonial practice. We feel that this is a time where the artworks are basically appreciated for their visual styles and not for the thematic connections that was there in their traditional root, and it's just picked up as a visual style. And many of the contemporary artists who do not even belong to a family of the Madhubani, Jatwarpur, Rati and all those places, but they're living somewhere else, but they're still appreciating that style and using that style. They're learning it and exploiting the virtues of those styles in their for the creative expression. So that is indeed something which is showing some kind of a perspective for this kind of styles, and the style is also so rich and distinctive that it was quite inevitable that people would pick up and go for this kind of styles. I'll take another example, that is the Kalamkari tradition of Sri Kalahasti. Again, when we go back to the traditional root of it, we see that it has all started in the temple of Sri Kalahasti as a temple tradition. As you know, when we visit a temple, we feel like collecting a souvenir. So we make the similar deities and their images and sell it in the like at the both sides of the streets, as well as we see a backdrop to decorate inside the Garbhagriha and in the places where the worshippers sit for their worships and other prayers. It's very common that we see lots of wall hangings there that depicts the religious stories, and they're often in the mode of narrative stories. So in the temple of Sri Kalahasti, which is very old, almost 1,000 years old and nearly that, we see that in that temple many people couldn't reach the temple because of many different reasons. Because of their age, the old age people, they didn't have access to the temple. It was a long way to reach there, and their health didn't permit it. So for those people, it was like as we know about the other temple traditions, that the idol used to come down in the form of the backdrop paintings, that you have the similar idols painted on the backdrops, and some the temple keepers, they'll bring that, they'll take it to the regular normal households, they'll show that to the dwellers of those houses, and also narrate the stories of the particular text. So that way it used to come down and reach common people, and that way the tradition survived. And then it also involves the particular tradition of kalamkari paintings, where the method and material is also something very rich, and it was traditionally known where they had their own techniques of making the different vegetable dyes, and there are quite a few unique shades that gives it a very different look. Also, we see that the kind of style that they picked up for those artworks were very distinctively recognizable. It gives you a very interesting style, and also they used a lot of scriptures, the Telugu scripts mainly, which is from that region, and they made the stories initially on those things. So let's see some of the examples and assess it. So coming to Srikalahasti temple, that were the major inspiration for this kind of a painting. What we see that the subject chosen to paint were restricted to gods and goddesses such as Krishna, Brahma, Ganesha, Durga, Kiratarjunya, Lakshmi, Rama, Shiva and Parvati. Kalamkari is a tradition where we see in the picture that a practitioner is painting that with a kalam or a pen made out of a stick, and they have a particular way of making this kalam which holds a lot of ink at a time, and it goes at a flow, and they paint the stories and the illustrations of the stories on the cloth with a flowy linear pattern throughout. So seen in the picture is a complete Ramayana done on a cloth by Nagarjun, the artist seen in the picture, and there are other people who helped me throughout my research to hold it and click photographs. So you can make a certain idea, you can create by that. These are some of the images that are from a very old tradition which is taken from the museum, and these are done with the same style with some appliques, and we can make out that these were some of the other styles which are very close to the regular practices that we get to see in today's time. They're there in these pictures. So just view the examples and try to get familiar with this particular style and recognize them, remember them. They're of course very memorable. There's another tradition which is known as Matani Pacheri of Gujarat that also follows a similar principle, that we make the mother goddess figure on the cloth. They're often using the block prints. That is another Kalamkari tradition that was not practiced in Srikalahasti, but it was more popular in another zone called Machilipattanam. Now in Gujarat also we see that they're using the same tradition. They partially block print certain areas, and then they fill it up with a kalam, and they fill it up with some rust or maroon color. So since it's like something where we see that the workers are dedicated to the mother goddess and her worship, chiefly the Chitaras and the Devi Puja community who do the practice of this folk art in Vansa and on the outskirts of Ahmedabad. Chitaras, who are involved in reviving this ancient temple craft called Matani Pacheri, using the Kalamkari technique. Traditionally, these works were displayed only on temples in Gujarat. The temple cartons or the backdrops became significant records of the various myths and legends associated with the living tradition of the people. Matani Pacheri or Mata no Chandervo or the Chandar, the chadar or the wrapper, means the temple cloth on the display which pertains specially to the mother goddess cult. They always have a central figure consisting of the patterned that and the commanding form of goddess Durga in various iconographic forms, but they also use a lot of patterns which are secular It has the trees, mostly the Kalpataru or the wish tree, and it is also connected to some of the deities that symbolizes blood sacrifice as a sacred feature of Mata or the mother goddess worship. So let's get familiar with the different traditions. We are not going to get deeper into the study right now, but just getting familiar with its outer look by looking at the quality of its the elements of the and understanding the visual principles, what gets depicted there. Seen in the picture are the examples of Tanjore painting. The Tanjore school of art was born on the banks of river Kaveri in South India. It developed out of the Bhakti movement long after the unification of the two great factions of Hinduism, the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites. However, it is to be noted that even the Vedas have a mention of Ratan Jadit Chitra or the jewel embedded paintings. The Tanjore school flourished under the royal patronage of the Maratha kings of Tanjore. That is in itself a historical incident and reached its pinnacle during the rule of Sarfoji Maharaj, a great patron for Tanjore painting. Later, it fell on bad days during which the workmanship suffered. During the early 18th century, when Tanjore was under the patronage of the Maratha rules, the Tanjore art developed. Tanjore, which is the name of Tanjavur, about 300 kilometers from Chennai, Tanjore was a capital of the Chola kingdom, which was made significant contributions to Indian art and architecture. The art form was distinct for its personality, which is painting style, which is a mix of formal and folk art. Because it has a royal patronage, we can see that there is some kind of a glorification in its execution, where they used a whole lot of jewels and the artwork looked much more glossier than a Kalamkari painting, but there are certain visual affinity that is very distinctively identified. The visual art of Tanjavur school had its growth and development over a long period from 1700 to 1900 century. The genesis of Tanjore art dates back to the early 18th century or probably even before, and it is a unique culmination of several influences. Integration of the art forms of Mysore as well as Andhra is fairly evident and apparent in these pictures. Tanjore art is a natural extension of the skill of Tanjore craftsmen. The art is more skill oriented and it demands a lot of attention on the fineness and perfection. Perhaps due to the royal patronage that it enjoyed throughout its peak phase, the art is fundamentally iconic and the theme is normally based on Hindu gods and goddesses and very rarely on heroes. The style and modality have undergone some minor variations due to the contemporary demands. The visual art of the Tanjavur school had its growth and development over a long period from 1700 to 1900, with its peak during the reign of Sarfoji Maharaj, who ruled during 1797 to 1833. It is a unique mixture of the Bhakti cult and the ability to present the same in an attractive manner. It is basically iconic, with the popular Hindu gods forming the central theme. If the painting depicts an event from Hindu mythology, then the main figure is supported by the number of smaller figures to bring out the reality of the event. While it does not call for major innovation or creativity, it does call for skill, fineness and perfection. Some of the popular themes are the coronation of Rama, Krishna eating butter, and Devi. We should also get familiar with another very significant but not so well known form, which is famous as Kalamanjattu or Kalam Elettu from Kerala. This is a tradition or a complete ephemeral performance that takes place during the Bhadrakali worship in Kerala, and what we see that it just too ephemeral and it stays for a very little while. It all starts with the worship of Bhadrakali, where the drama community, like painters from the drama community, they paint the image of Bhadrakali on the floor in a huge scale. The drummers also encourage the painters to paint, and they accompany them with their drum beats throughout. And after a while, it creates a trance-like condition where the painters would paint and the drummers will play their drums, and they reach a climax. At the end of it, when the worship gets over, they put their offerings on all those images, and by the time the worship is over, the image has also to be destroyed completely. So this is one tradition that needs a very special documentation, because we cannot get to see it, but it's all about how it gets created and destroyed in the same go and during a performance. So we'll try to see that and understand that with some of the examples that are there. Seen in the picture is how the painters develop the images of Bhadrakali in a very large scale, and how they do it together. It's not an individual practice, it's done by many people together. The drawing is done directly with the hand, that is without using any tool whatsoever. The powders used are all natural from vegetable or mineral or combined sources. The usual items used are rice, turmeric, yellow, charcoal from paddy husk, black, blend of turmeric powder and lime that yields into a red color, and powdered leaves that gives a green color. Although several leaves are found suitable, the most commonly used are those of Albizera lebec. Eventually, the drawing develops with the central line drawn with a black-white powder. The color filling is done by the drummers. The layers grow gradually towards it, and slowly the artists, who are the traditional drummers, they develop sound to complement it. Grains and other offerings are to be piled in and around the painting is the allotted places. The space is seen decorated with garlands and fire lamps. Lighting is of utmost importance in these rituals. The drawing starts at selected time and are to be erased immediately after the worship is over. We see a significant influence of Kalamanjattu and its practice in the mural of Kerala and the adjoining areas, where the artwork stays for a very short while, but the viewers, they carry it further and they use the similar kind of techniques and the similar kind of qualities of it in the mural paintings, which is done on the wall and with some other variations. So let's see the contemporary murals of Kerala and how Kalamanjattu has its influence on that. So there are close connections as far as the visual and also the thematic contents are concerned, but it's very important to get familiar with them. So here we see a contemporary artwork. These are the murals in Dakshin Chitra made by the mural painters of Kerala. And the use of colors, the linear qualities, the formations are traditional, and the expressions are also very, very sophisticated and fine. But the subject matter, of course, it's not something which is connected to the secular themes, though it's contemporary, but it's still following the traditional theme as its subject matter. So, with that, we may raise a few questions at this point, and that will help us to understand the issue in a much greater detail. One is that, can Indian art in its folk tradition be codified? How do we make definition of Indian art in its folk and minor form? Do the sporadic art practices share a common connection? Do they hold a common entity? Is it the religion and cultural value that operates the homogeneity in practice, or the universal rules of visual aesthetics that gives it a prominent identity as a whole? With those questions in mind, holding them, we will continue with our next lecture.